Bhagavate Vasudevaye. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaye. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaye. Text 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Imam Vivashvate Yogam Proktavan Aham Avyayam Vivashwan Manavi Praha Manurikvakshu Abravit.
The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivaswan. And Vivaswan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku.
Evam param param praptam imam rajasayo vidu sakale niha mahata yoga nashta parandapa.
The supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science as it is appears to be lost.
Sa evyam mayatitya yoga prokta puratana bhaktosi me sakha cheti rahashyam hayatet uttamam.
That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as my friend, and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of this science.
Arjuna vacha aparam bhavato janma param janma vivashvata katham etad vijaityam tvam adu proktavan iti.
Arjuna said, the sun god Vivaswan is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him?
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Bahuni me vyatitani janmani tava Arjuna tani aham veda sarvani natvam veda parantapa.
The personality of Godhead said, many, many births both you and I have passed. I can remember all of them, but you cannot, O subduer of the enemy.
Ajopi san avyayatma bhutanam ishvaro vishan prakritim swayam adhishtaya sambhavyami atma mayaya.
Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form.
Yada yada hi dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuttanam adharmasya tadatmanam shujam aham.
Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of religion, at that time I descend myself.
Paritranaya sadhunam vinashaya cha duskritam dharma samsthapanarthaya sambhavani yuge yuge.
To deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion, I myself appear millennium after millennium.
Janma karma cha me divyam evam yo veti tatvata tyaktva deham punarjanma neti mam eti sa arjana.
One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna.
Vitaraga bhaya krodha manmaya mam upashrita bahavo jnana tapasya Bhutamadbhavam agattaha.
Being free from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me.
Ye yatha mam prapadyante tam deva bhajami aham mama varmanuvartante manushya partha sarvasha.
As all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pratha.
Kankshanta karmanam siddhim yajanta iha devata shipram hi manusya loke siddhir bhavati karmaja.
Men in this world desire success in fruitive activities, and therefore they worship the demigods. Quickly, of course, men get results from fruitive work in this world.
Chaturvarnyam maya shastam gunakarma vibhakashe tasya kartaram apimam vidya akartaram avyayam.
According to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable.
Namam karmani limpanti name karma phale spraha iti mam yo vijannati karma apirna sapadyate.
There is no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. One who understands this truth about me also does not become entangled in the fruitive reactions of work.
Evam jnanvat kritam karma purva api mamakshabhi guru karmeva tasmatvam purva taram kritam.
All the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding of my transcendental nature. Therefore, you should perform your duty following in their footsteps.
Kim karma kim akarmeti kavayopyatra mohita tatte karma pravakshyami yajna kyanvat mokshase subha.
Even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. Now I shall explain to you what action is, knowing which you will be liberated from all misfortune.
Karmano hi api bodhyam cha vikarmana akarmanascha bodhyavyam kahana karmano gati.
The intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what action is, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is.
Karmani akarmaye pashyad akarmani cha karmayaha sabuddhiman manusyesu sayukta kritsna karmakrat.
One who sees inaction in action and action in inaction is intelligent among men, and he is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities.
Yasya sarve samarambha kama sankalpa varjita jnana jnani daga karmanam Tam aho panditam buddha.
One is understood to be in full knowledge whose every endeavor is devoid of desire for sense gratification. He is said by sages to be a worker for whom the reactions of work have been burned up by the fire of perfect knowledge.
Tyaktva karma phalasangam nityatripto nirashaya karmani abhipravrittopi neva kanchit karoti sa.
Abandoning all attachment to the results of his activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no fruitive action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings.
Niraseyata chittatma tyakta sarva parigraha satram kevalam karma kurvannapnoti kilbisham.
Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus working, he is not affected by sinful reactions.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, wonderful. Thank you so much, Asha Mataji, for Asha Mataji did English, that's Sanskrit, yeah, very nicely. And Puja Mataji did very nice English. Thank you so much, both of you. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay, so let's now just go on to the PowerPoint. Give me a second. Okay, so we're starting a brand new chapter today, chapter 4. And what we'll do is we'll try and connect the two today so we can see where the flow is from chapter 3 to chapter 4. Chapter 4 is transcendental knowledge, Jnana Yoga. A very important chapter. Every chapter is important. So let's first, before we get into the chapter 4, we'll just quickly do a little connection with 3 and 4. So in chapter 3, Krishna's explained that lust covers our knowledge and that ignorance binds us to the material world. Chapter 3, as we know, was Karma Yoga, and Krishna explained all kinds of actions and reactions there, which will also continue in more detail in this chapter. So chapter 3 also explained that dutiful detached work, or Karma Yoga, is a means given to attain transcendental knowledge. And chapter 3 thus glorified the transcendental knowledge. Why? Because transcendental knowledge is able to elevate us from Sakam Karma Yoga to Nishkam Karma Yoga. And then is able to award our intelligence and the strength to overcome all lusty desires, and having the power to purify our consciousness from passion to goodness. So this is what transcendental knowledge does, all these things, and these are very, very necessary for progress in spiritual life. So now chapter 4 emphasizes on what is transcendental knowledge, and how it is received. So we will now learn. So chapter 3 told us the importance about transcendental knowledge, and now chapter 4 will teach us how we can receive it, how we can learn it. Also in chapter 3:30, it is mentioned that to perform the highest level of Karma Yoga, surrendering all work to Krishna, then so to do that, we must know Krishna. So, if you want to surrender to somebody, you need to know that person, isn't it? When we even, for example, we decide to take initiation, we do so much research, we find out, we listen to our Guru Maharaj, or rather future Guru Maharaj, and we listen, we make sure that we know him, we know exactly what his sadhana is, what his devotion service attitude is, what is his attitude towards to his disciples. Once we know that, then we can surrender. So similarly, we need to understand who Krishna is so we can surrender. So chapter 4 gives us this knowledge. We'll do chapter 4, and today we will summarize the whole chapter so we can get an overview. So verses 1 to 10 gives us transcendental knowledge about Krishna. This section, actually, Krishna clearly will show us the difference between us and him, the difference between the ordinary living entity and himself, the Supreme Lord. Then 11 to 15 will talk about how we can apply the transcendental knowledge. Having book knowledge is one thing, that is called Gyan. But when we can apply that knowledge, it's called Vigyan. So that will take us there. Then 16 to 24 takes us to understanding karma on the platform of Jnana. So now, as I was saying, the karma that we have heard about in chapter 3, it will be now connected to Jnana. So we'll have a deeper understanding of that. Then 25 to 33 talks about sacrifices lead to transcendental knowledge. We need to sacrifice. So, to do anything in life, as we know, there's got to be some sacrifice. Even the simplest things, you need to sacrifice something. So in this case, we need to be ready to sacrifice. We need to sacrifice our time. We need to sacrifice some of our habits. We need to sacrifice maybe some of the company that we keep, a lot of things, so that it can lead us to transcendental knowledge. And then 34 to 42 gives a conclusion of the chapter 4. So this is the flow of the chapter. We will begin today with text 1. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Bhagavad-Gita, chapter 4, Transcendental Knowledge, Jnana Yoga, text 1. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha Imam Vivashvate Yogam Proktavan Aham Avyayam Vivashvan Manave Praha Manutikshvakave Brave. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivashvan, and Vivashvan instructed it to Manu, the father of mankind, and Manu in turn instructed it to Ikshvaku. So this verse, just important thing before we move on to the purport, to speak about a couple of things about the verse. So, Avyayam. Proktavan aham avyayam. Avyayam means indestructible, imperishable. So this science that we are studying, it is not something that just was created by somebody at some point, and like any material thing will be destroyed at some point. No. It is imperishable, which means it is transcendental. Everything material begins at one point, lasts for a little while, and then it perishes. But transcendental reality is imperishable. So straight away, we can understand from this word, Avyayam, that what we are reading, what we are studying is transcendental subject. Nothing material about it. In the translation, we can see Krishna instructed it to Vivaswan, Vivaswan instructed to Manu, and then Manu to so instructed. Same three words in the translation, but you can see Sanskrit is such a versatile language that it is using three different words. So Vivaswan to Manu, he says Praha. Manu to Ikshvaku Abravit. No, sorry, first of all, Lord Krishna to Vivaswan, he says Proktavan. And then Vivaswan to Manu, he says Praha. And Manu to Ikshvaku, he says Abravit. All three words in Sanskrit, they mean the same thing. So it's just interesting how beautiful the Sanskrit language is. And these different words help you to connect, helps the compiler to connect the verse in rhythm. So now we need to read the purport. The purport is quite a big purport. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing this and share another screen so we can read straight from, yeah, just share it now again. No, it's the wrong one, sorry. Okay, that should work now. Let me just try. Normally I put the purport on the PowerPoint, but it was quite long, so I thought I'd do it this way. Let's see, it'll help me. Let me do it now. Oh. Okay, can you see the purport? Somebody can tell me, please.
Yes,
Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Okay, so it's a long purport, so we will have to get 3 people perhaps to recite. So let me quickly bring up the names so I can see who's here today. Okay, so I've got Bhagavati Mataji, if you can take the first paragraph.
Okay.
And then Ajay Mukund Prabhu second. And then let me just go down and say Hema Mataji, you can take third part. We will decide literally as we go when to stop. So we can start as and when you're ready. So this is the purport. Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Hare Krishna. Is that the one we said, herein we find the history, yeah?
That's the one.
Herein we find the history of Bhagavad-Gita traced from a remote time when it was delivered to the royal order of all planets, beginning from the sun planet. The kings of all planets are especially meant for the protections of the inhabitants, and therefore the royal order should understand the science of Bhagavad-Gita in order to be able to rule the citizens and protect them from material bondage to lust. Human life is meant for cultivation of spiritual knowledge. In eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the executive heads of all states and all planets are obliged to impart this lesson to the citizen by education, culture, and devotion. In other words, the executive heads of all states are intended to spread the science of Krishna consciousness so that the people may take advantage of this great science and pursue a successful path, utilizing the opportunity of the human form of life. Hare Krishna. Shall I carry on, Prabhu?
Yes, thank you so much. Okay, Ajay Mukund Prabhu, if you can take the second paragraph up to it's an immemorial here.
Okay, Hare Krishna. In this millennium, the sun god is known as Vivaswan, the king of the sun, which is the origin of all planets within the solar system. In the Brahma Samhita 552, it is stated, I'm not sure of the measure, Yak Chakshuresha Savita Sakala Grahanam Raja Samasta Sura Muti Esha Tejaha Yasya Yasyadnaya Brahmati Sambrita Kala Chakro Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Vajami. Let me worship. Lord Brahma said, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, Krishna, who is the original person and under whose order the sun, which is the king of all planets, is assuming immense power and heat. The sun represents the eye of the Lord and traverses his orbit in obedience to his order. The sun is the king of the planets, and the sun god, at present of the name Vivaswan, rules the sun planet, which is controlling all other planets by supplying heat and light. He's rotating under the order of Krishna, and Lord Krishna originally made Vivaswan his first disciple to understand the science of Bhagavad-Gita. The Gita is not therefore a speculative treatise for the insignificant mundane scholar, but is a standard book of knowledge coming down from time immemorial.
Thank you, Ajay Mukund. So we've got next section is quite long, so maybe Hemavataji, you can take us through that, please.
Thank you. Hare
To the
Krishna.
end. Yeah.
In the Mahabharata, Shanti Parva 348, 51, 52, we can trace out the history of the Gita as follows. Treta Yugadau cha tato vivaswan munave dadau manuscha loka prati artham sutaye shvaku kave dadau ikshvakuna cha kathito vyapya lokam avashtitaha. In the beginning of millennium known as Treta Yuga, this science of the relationship with the Supreme was delivered by Vivaswan to Manu. Manu, being the father of mankind, gave it to his son Maharaj Ikshvaku, the king of this earth planet and forefather of the Raghu dynasty, in which Lord Ramchandra appeared. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita existed in human society from the time of Maharaj Ikshvaku. At the present moment, we have just passed through 5,000 years of Kali Yuga, which lasts 432,000 years. Before this, there was Dwapar Yuga, 800,000 years, and before that, there was Treta Yuga, 1,200,000 years. Thus, some 2,005,000 years ago, Manu spoke the Bhagavad Gita to his disciple and son Maharaj Ikshvaku, the king of this planet Earth. The age of the current Manu is calculated to last some 305,300,000 years, of which 120,400,000 has passed. Accepting that before the birth of Manu, the Gita was spoken by the Lord to his disciple, the sun god Vivaswan, a rough estimate is that the Gita was spoken at least 120,400,000 years ago, and in human society it has been extant for 2 million years. It was re-spoken by the Lord again to Arjuna about 5,000 years ago. That is the rough estimate of the history of the Gita according to the Gita itself and according to the version of the speaker, Lord Shri Krishna. It was spoken to sun god Vivaswan because he is also a Kshatriya and is the father of all Kshatriyas who are descendants of the sun god or the Surya Vamsa Kshatriyas. Because Bhagavad Gita is as good as the Vedas, being spoken by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, this knowledge is apurushaya, superhuman. Since the Vedic instructions are accepted as they are, without human interpretation, the Gita must therefore be accepted without mundane interpretation. The mundane wranglers may speculate on the Gita in their own ways, but that is not Bhagavad Gita as it is. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita has to be accepted as it is from the disciplinic succession, and it is described herein that the Lord spoke to sun god, the sun god spoke to his son Manu, and Manu spoke to his son Ikshvaku. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Haribol. Thank you so much, all of you. Very nice to read. Bhagavati Mata Ji, Ajay Mukund Prabhu, and Hema Mata Ji. Very nice to read. Hema Mata Ji, the Sanskrit verse you read was also very nice. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so let me stop sharing that and move on to my presentation again. Okay, so before we start, before we go further, let me just, 1 second, I need to do something. Give me a second. Yes, we'll do a quick invocation because time is running away. Om Ajnanati Mirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Tapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Charu Swami Namine Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Prasharine Nirvishesh Sunivadi Pashakarya Sakarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, right, let's just take it here, take it, that's it. So we did the verse already, we did the purport already. Now we just dive into the purport. Lots to discuss in this chapter. We'll see how far we get. We haven't got that much time left. Prabhupada starts off by saying, herein we find the history of Bhagavad-Gita traced from a remote time when it was delivered to the royal order of all planets, beginning from the sun planet. So the history of the Bhagavad-Gita. So this is what this chapter starts with, just explaining to us that this knowledge that we're reading actually is very, very ancient. So it says that it exists in the human society, it says Maharaj Yakshvaku, which is about 2 million years ago, right? So this is the oldest knowledge that is known to mankind. It was given to Vivashwan 120,400,000 years ago. And it was again spoken to Arjuna 5,000 years ago. Why? Because at that time, the knowledge was lost. This will be covered in the next text. Text 2 will speak about that. So knowledge is coming down from the authorities. Somebody who is very perfect gives the knowledge, and then the perfect person who receives it, he then imbibes the knowledge, then he passes on to somebody else like that. So this is the way of passing on knowledge. This knowledge is a descending process, as I say. It's a descending process where someone, like I mentioned, you learn it from somebody, you imbibe it properly, then you pass it on to some parampara. This is exactly how it works, without any change, without making any additions or subtractions. Two ways of acquiring knowledge, which is explained. One is explained here, descending. The other is ascending. Ascending process and then descending process. Ascending process, there is a Sanskrit phrase for it. Does anybody know what the Sanskrit is for this process?
Arohana.
Yes. Who is that?
Venkat Prabhu.
Oh, Venkat, yes, Aroha. Very well done, Venkat Prabhu. Aroha Pantha. Aroha Pantha is called ascending process. So ascending process means that somebody is trying to assess the knowledge using his own faculties, his own senses, his own intelligence. So that process is quite dangerous and not so perfect, because when we try and use our scholarly knowledge and book knowledge and our senses, our intelligence, everything is imperfect. So that knowledge that we go ascending knowledge, it may never be right, and we may never it may never lead us to the conclusion. But the process we use is a descending process, which is called in Sanskrit, Venkat Prabhu.
Avaroha.
Yes, well done. Avaroha Pantha. Avaroha Pantha. So we follow the Avaroha Pantha, which is descending, which is more sure. You don't in English they say you do not need to reinvent the wheel. So similarly, we take a knowledge as read. When our acharyas give us a knowledge, we don't question it. It doesn't mean that we should not clear our doubts. We should certainly clear our doubts, but submissively. We don't challenge what's coming down to us from the parampara, because we have to first of all realize that this knowledge has been imbibed by people who are maybe 1,000 times, million times more brighter than us. So we have to accept it. Some things may not make sense right away to us because of our mundane conditioning, but we need to make sure that we follow it and take it at least at face value in the beginning, and then it will eventually sink in. So Prabhupada therefore says in the purport that the Gita is not therefore a speculative treatise for the insignificant mundane scholar, but it is a standard book of knowledge coming down from time immemorial. In human society, it has been extant for 2 million years. Prabhupada uses these old words, extant. I had to look it up. Extant means it exists. So 2 million years. Prabhupada then says, human life is meant for cultivation of spiritual knowledge in eternal relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and the executive heads of all states and all planets are obliged to impart this lesson to the citizens by education, culture, and devotion. So the purpose of human life is mentioned here. What is the purpose of human life? And there's a verse which is one of my favorite verses in Bhagavatam, so Srimad Bhagavatam 126. I've repeated it many times, but we repeat it again. Savai pumsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhot suje. Ahaitukiya pati hata yayatma suprasiddhati. So the supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So this particular verse is spoken by Sutta Goswami in answer to the very first question by the sages of Naimisharanya. What is the purpose? What is the duty of a human being? So in the material existence, we are all diseased. This condition that we are living in is not normal. It's a diseased condition. Our normal condition is actually a pure spiritual existence, the Brahma-Bhuta existence. But right now we are covered. And the modern education system here, in this Prabhupada says that the heads of the states should impart the lessons to citizens by education, culture, and devotion. But the modern education system is designed to create servants. Now, spiritually speaking, being a servant is a great thing, because spiritually we are all servants of the Lord. But here, the education system is making servants not for the Lord, it's making servants of Maya. The schools, universities, they're all teaching us to get the best degree, get the best job. And this way, then you get entangled into Maya and you never get out. I put on the purport there because time is running short, so I'll skip that for a minute. So Srila Prabhupada, actually talking about this education, Prabhupada used to often ask, where is the department that teaches the science of the soul? Because whenever I used to go to visit universities and give lectures there, they would give him a tour of the university. And okay, this is the department of physics, this is the department of chemistry, department of whatever. But it says, well, where is the department for soul? So this is what he said in the journey of self-discovery. He says people do not care about the constitutional position of the soul. There are different departments of knowledge in different universities and many technological institutions, all to study and understand the subtle laws of material nature. And there are medical research laboratories to study the physiological conditions of the material body. But there is no institution to study the constitutional position of the soul. That is the greatest drawback of materialistic civilization, which is simply an external manifestation of soul. So this is from the journey of self-discovery. Prabhupada then continues, in other words, the executive heads of all states are intended to spread the science of Krishna consciousness so that people may take advantage of this great science and pursue a successful path, utilizing the opportunity of the human form of life. So this is the point. The heads of states, it is their responsibility. In the previous times, they were Raja, but they were Rajarshis. Raja and Rishi is the sandhi of the two words, Rajarshis. Because although they were kings, but they were also very well conversant with the spiritual science. They were able to then lead the people in the right way. So here, I'll bet you there are many kings actually in history who have followed this path and done it properly. But I've just picked up 3 that came to mind this afternoon. So anybody know which personality is here in the red dhoti?
Prabhu Maharaj.
Prabhu Maharaj. Well done, Venkat Prabhu. Prithvi Maharaj, accolades for him. But one of the main things that I remember about Prithvi Maharaj was, well, not that I was there reading about it, was that Prithvi Maharaj, he considered his primary duty to enlighten the citizens with spiritual knowledge. That was his main concern. He was very keen to do that, fulfilling the duty of a Rajarshi. And here, which personality he is here in a white dhoti? You can see
Yudhishthira Maharaj.
Yudhishthira Maharaj, wonderful. Yudhishthira Maharaj. So again, Yudhishthira Maharaj, so many wonderful qualities. Dharmaraj, he was the personification of righteousness. So, and he was Yudhishthira Maharaj was completely freed from any material desires, no sense gratification. He didn't have any greed for personal fame or wealth or power, nothing. Complete selfless. So this made him a worthy emperor. The leaders, political leaders we have nowadays, they are, when they start off with the right motive to try and serve the public. But as we all know, eventually they get lost in the political power game, and they become very selfish in terms of their own power, etc., etc. And then this personality. You see with the cow, we see the bull.
Parikshit Maharaj.
Parikshit Maharaj, exactly. It's the bull with only one leg. So that's Parikshit Maharaj. I think at that time it was 3 legs, wasn't it? Yeah. Parikshit Maharaj. So Parikshit Maharaj is, again, he followed the Vedic system, and he used to have a team of brahmanas, learned, saintly people, he used to take constant advice on state affairs. So that was his think tank. So nowadays, people like Boris Johnson would have a group of people who he would consult. That would be his think tank. But the difference would be that these people are paid. They are on a salary. So there's it's not clean. Their motive is completely not clean. But here in the old days, the learned brahmanas would give their advice completely free of charge. And there was complete purity. And this is why there was flawlessness in the administration. So that. Let's just move on. Prabhupada then says, since the Vedic instructions are accepted as they are, without human interpretation, the Gita must therefore be accepted without mundane interpretation. The mundane wranglers may speculate on the Gita in their own ways, but this is not Bhagavad Gita as it is. Therefore, Bhagavad Gita has to be accepted as it is from the disciplic succession. Again, talking about parampara here. So, interestingly, when we think about how we are all instructed to read, first we read the Bhagavad Gita, then we read the Bhagavatam, then Chaitanya Charitamrita. This is the process. But Prabhupada didn't translate the Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada started, as we know, first of all, he did many books, and then he started to translate the Bhagavatam. And he went to USA when he had the I think, first 3 cantos or something like that. He didn't have the Bhagavad Gita. But we now see why, because he actually at that time, because already at that time, there was more than 200 different translations existing in English. So this is why Prabhupada thought, it's already there in English. There was no Bhagavatam translation in English, and he focused on that. But then what happened was this. He says, when I was in America in 1966, one American lady asked me to recommend an English edition of Bhagavad Gita. But honestly, I could not recommend any of them on account of their whimsical explanation. That gave me the impetus to write the Bhagavad Gita as it is. So you can see it was necessary. He found it necessary because all the verses that he was trying to look at in the library were all not proper. They were translated by scholars without much knowledge, or translated by people who had motives to convince people to believe their own version of events, motive. So Bhagavad Gita then, Prabhupada first, that's why 1968 in New York, Macmillan Press published the first abridged version, about 300, 400 pages. Because actually Macmillan Press didn't believe that this book would sell so much, or there would be demand so much. They were quite reluctant. So that's why they only agreed to do the abridged version. But then after the success of that, 72, the complete edition of the Bhagavad Gita, 1,000 pages, was printed. So this is the recent history of our Bhagavad Gita as it is. Now, a question for everybody. When was the first ever Bhagavad Gita translated into English? Anybody know? Can anybody guess?
1869.
1869, Urmila Ben says. Okay, anybody else? Just give you a clue, it's before that. Anybody else? No guesses? So the very first Bhagavad Gita was translated in November 1784. Think about it. 1784, that's when the first translation of Bhagavad Gita happened. And this came through the courtesy of a personality called Sir Charles Wilkins. Sir Charles Wilkins was a senior merchant with the East India Company. They went to they're the first party to go to India, right? And what he did was, he was very interesting. He was a very bright person. He learned Sanskrit, and then he translated the Bhagavad Gita. So really, all kudos to him. First of all, to do this was fantastic, that he actually went out of the way to learn Sanskrit, in his spare time, and then he used his learning of Sanskrit to translate the Bhagavad Gita. So he actually had a group of Bengali Pandits who were proofreading his translations. This is how he did it. But you can see, because he was a scholar, the purity cannot be there. Even if the Bengali Pandits are checking the thing, but whatever thoughts have gone in there, they are scholarly. Whereas Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita that we are studying, Bhagavad Gita as it is very much from a devotional point of view. So when a pure devotee is translating, and when a scholar is translating, of course, there's going to be a big difference, right? So we will stop here, but I've got 2 important announcements to make. So we will just do that before we open for questions and answers. So You've seen a message on the group about hospitality. Yesterday, I think Vidhamachandra put it there. So we have hospitality services. I myself have been attached to that for the last, I think, 10, 15 years. I've been doing that service. It's a wonderful service. So on the weekends, what we do is we meet guests as they're coming. So literally anybody who's coming, we can approach people and tell them more about the temple, take them for a tour, so that they can get more knowledge of the temple. Because many people come to a temple, they do darshan, take prasad, go away. They don't understand what our philosophy is. They don't understand who Prabhupada is. Most of them have no idea who Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is. So our opportunity to get them a bit more involved. So this is the service to receive guests and give them a tour, right? And we'll give you training. Whoever's interested, we can train you up. You can shadow some of us when we're doing the service, so you can learn like that. Very, very satisfying service, because these people who get the knowledge from us, they are very thankful, and they go back satisfied, and most of them come back to do some service or get more attached to Krishna. So Krishna says in the 18th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita, there is nobody more dear to me than one who speaks about me to others. So this is the way to become dear to Krishna. So please, devotees, if anybody's interested, please send me a message privately, and I will then arrange for us to meet and do a session for training. And then Divya Gaurangi Mataji has shared a prayer booklet today, because from Wednesday we have the Damodar month starting. Actually, candle offering starts from tomorrow morning, I think. So Damodar Leela, very, very important month. Damodar month is the month where many, many amazing pastimes took place. And of course, Diwali also happens in Damodar month. But the most important pastime that took place was this Damodar Leela, where Lord Krishna, because he broke the pots of butter. Mother Yashoda ties him to the grinding mortar, and then the whole Leela takes place. So we won't have time to go through the pastime. But during this month, it's very important to offer candles to the deities, to Lord Krishna and Yashoda Mataji, and also to do extra chanting, do extra service, extra reading. It is said that it is like the sale of a century. When we go, sometimes we go shopping, they say buy one, get one free. Here, during the month of Kartik, whatever spiritual activities we do, it is like buy one, get 1,000 free. So it's very, very important to focus very deeply in our sadhana in this month. So there'll be more, I'm sure, tomorrow. Not who it is tomorrow. Whoever's doing the session tomorrow will speak more about it. So we'll end here, and I will open for any questions, comments.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Venkat Prabhu.
Thank you for your wonderful class. I have one question from long time, and even as Prabhupada says, we actually have some Sanskrit words called Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, isn't it? So I was actually speaking this to my daughter. So, and then Prabhupada says, now the teachers, as we talked today, right? Now the university teachers are not actually teaching the knowledge. So then, are these teachers called Guru Brahma, or are they applicable for this verse, or is only spiritual masters is applicable?
So yes, good question, Venkat Prabhu. So first of all, I think this verse probably is referring to spiritual masters, but in one sense, you can say a guru, even somebody giving you mundane knowledge, is also a guru. So in that sense, it's not wrong to call them a guru, because anybody gives you any knowledge. And of course, we do know that the mundane knowledge we get from universities is not useless, because you do need it to survive in this world. But the point is that they're doing it exclusively and missing out on giving the spiritual knowledge. See, life should be on two tracks of the rail, right? It should be Swadharma and Sanatana Dharma. Swadharma is what we learn to survive in this world, and Sanatana Dharma is our spiritual life. So these two should go together. So these teachers, they should be teaching both rather than just the one. I'm not saying that they should be exclusively teaching spirituality, but this is why. So, but yeah, to answer your question again, yeah, a teacher also is a guru, but that particular verse is probably more to the spiritual.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu.
Yeah, and one more question. We actually during this on the Kartik month or some Ekadasis, we get like 1000% benefit. In which scripture it is mentioned, Prabhuji?
Good, very good question. I've heard it mentioned by many spiritual masters, and I am sure that if there's a reference, everything that we speak, there's a reference for it. But to be honest, right now I cannot quote a reference. I will definitely do my homework, and I will. If I find out, I will put it on the group chat.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you. Couple of messages on the group, on the chat I just take. This one is from Surabhi Mataji. Surabhi Mataji says, Pranam, thank you so much. Okay. The time duration is too much, right from sun god to Arjuna. As it perfect as it is, if absolute knowledge is 100%, how much percentage came to Arjuna and how much? Okay, fine. So what I can just to repeat the gist of your question, saying that because time, so much time is millions of billions of years have passed. Okay, so question is that as we know, for example, in mundane knowledge, things filter down, and then some of the things are lost along the way. So this is what happened, and this is why Krishna spoke again. So your question about how much did Arjuna get? Arjuna got 100% because Arjuna got it directly from Krishna. So this is why Arjuna got 100%. So before that, there was dilution and there was, loss of knowledge. But that's why Arjuna got it again 5,000 years ago, 100%, because Krishna spoke it exactly as he had spoken to Vishwan.
Why did he choose that specific, epic Mahabharata to speak the Gita?
Okay, very nice question.
Just for information. Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Thank you, Pranam.
So the point is that Krishna didn't want to, he wasn't going to speak the Bhagavad Gita. Well, actually, Krishna wanted to speak the Bhagavad Gita. The reality is Krishna wanted to speak the Bhagavad Gita. And that's why through Yogamaya, he put Arjuna into ignorance. So Arjuna would get confused about to fight the war or not fight the war. And then to convince him about the duties of a human being, he spoke the whole Bhagavad Gita. So it was spoken on the battlefield because Arjuna was not going to fight. And by hearing Bhagavad Gita, he was then convinced, and then he fought. Because the whole idea was that he's fighting not for his own purpose, he's fighting because it is Krishna's wish. And this is the whole teaching of Bhagavad Gita. We do not what chapter 3 spoke about it a lot, right? Nishkaya karma yoga. We do our karma yoga, karma, but not with any desire for the results. We do it as Krishna wishes us. We act as per our instructions of Krishna and our gurus. So this is what was taught.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Surabhi Mataji. And then there's another message here. Okay, then I just basically from Shipra Mataji just saying thank you for the class. Thank you, Shipra Mataji, for your appreciation. Okay, anybody else?
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna.
Namrita Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, sorry. Prabhuji, maybe thank you for the wonderful class, first of all, really appreciate it. Prabhuji, when I was reading the Bhagavad Gita, I was obviously looking at all the succession disciples. So before Srila Prabhupada ji, who was the Guru Maharaj, and obviously we had Krishna in the photo, and then we had Krishna as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the photo, and all those. So Prabhuji, does that mean because Srila Prabhupada ji has written such great books, is it fair to say that Krishna was actually helping him to write this book? So even though he's got the knowledge from his Guru Maharaj, isn't it fair to say that he actually got it from Lord Krishna himself?
Absolutely, Namrita Mataji. That's a very nice point you're making. Actually, Prabhupada at one point did mention something like that. Because when Prabhupada was translating, he was saying that it is he would actually get the inspiration from Krishna. So actually, Krishna was acting through Prabhupada. This is why the potency of the Bhagavad Gita is so amazing. You know, we spoke about so many, when Prabhupada translated this particular Bhagavad Gita as it is, there were already 200 odd translations. Now there must be over 1,000 translations of Bhagavad Gita in English. But you see, all those thousands of Bhagavad Gita translations did not make even a handful of devotees. But this one Bhagavad Gita as it is, Prabhupada Bhagavad Gita, has converted hundreds of thousands of Westerners into practicing devotees. This is the potency, this is the power of the book. And this is why what you're saying, Namata Mataji, is very, very true. Prabhupada, of course, was an empowered soul himself, but the knowledge was coming through directly from a very, very spiritual source.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Go ahead.
Hare Krishna. Now, Prabhuji, I just wanted to clarify the question that one Prabhuji just asked, that where is the Praman for that you get the benefit of doing any auspicious activities or austerities for Kartik month? I had heard in one lecture, it's in the Padma Puran, but I thought, let me get the evidence up before I say. I'm just going to read this from the Padma Puran. Kartik is the best, the purest of purifiers, and the most glorious of all months. Kartik month is particularly dear to Lord Sri Krishna. Any vrat, even the smallest, will yield huge results. The effects of performing a Kartik vrat last for 100 lifetimes, whereas ordinary vrats only last for one lifetime. Srimati Radhika Rani is the presiding deity of the holy month of Kartik. Rupa Goswami and others refer to Radha Rani as Kartik Devi. In other words, Radhika is the goddess or presiding deity of the Kartik Vrata. This is from the Padma Puran.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kusum Mataji. You saved me doing the homework. So there you go. You got the answer here. Venkat Prabhu is from the Padma Purana, and we got it a chapter and verse from Kusum Mataji. Thank you, Mataji, so much.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Kusum Mataji.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, okay, here's a message.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna,
Sorry.
Mataji. Yes. Go
Hare
on.
Krishna, my humble obeisances to you. Sorry. I was just going to add to, you know, when Namrata Mataji asked about whether Prabhupada was getting the power directly from Krishna. So I remember the story, I think it is there somewhere in one of the books, that one day Prabhupada was reading his book, and then one disciple asked him, Prabhupada, you have written the book, you have written Bhagavad-Gita, Bhagavatam, so why are you reading it? And Prabhupada said, I have not written, Krishna has written it. So I remember that story.
Good, yeah, very good point, Rupama. Thank you so much. Prabhupada used to often sit and listen to his own books being read by, so he'll ask one of the disciples to read. He'll sit there and he will listen intensely. And sometimes he would show surprise. He would raise his eyebrows thinking, oh, like he would be surprised. He's written it himself, but he would be surprised. So it shows you that, you know, this came, of course, from a superior power. Very nice point that Jay Prabhu is making here on the chat. I know we're running very late, but I'll just go through this quickly. He says the purport talks about the age of the current Manu. I also read somewhere that Brahma is halfway through his 100 years. How do we know these things with any accuracy? Who on earth is keeping the record? So yes, good point. So the thing is, we do not have, of course, our faculties, our senses. We do not have the intelligence to even start working these things out. But these things are there in the Puranas. In the Bhagavad Gita, actually, it is mentioned what is the age of Brahma. So then from the total age of Brahma, we can calculate the ages of Manus, because they are in one day of Brahma. One day of Brahma is given as 1,000 Chaturyugas. So in one day of Brahma, so there's the calculation of what is the day of Brahma. Day is 4 billion, no, is it 4 million? 4 million, 320,000, something like that, yeah. 4,320,000 years. So then we can, there are 14 Manus in one day of Brahma, so we can work out their ages like this. So yes, so this is how we can work back and do the sums. And like I was saying earlier, these things are mentioned in the Puranas, and previous acharyas have given us his numbers. So we take these numbers as read. Like I said before, we cannot go on and dig deeper. We just take the knowledge from our superiors because they have done the homework. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. So I hope we can accept that. So there are a lot more questions here. I'm just conscious about the time. There's 4 more questions here. Excuse me for being, however, okay, no, okay. Lila Purushottam Prabhu, thank you for your message. Thank you. Okay, that's basically just thank yous. Thank you so much. Then there's message from KKHH, I always forget the name. It says, whenever, okay, there's a decline. This is quoting a verse from this chapter, actually, verse 7, where he says, Yada yada hi dharmasya glani. So the Krishna descended to complete so many leelas and to speak this knowledge. Yes, thank you for making the point. Krishna came especially to give us this knowledge. We will end here, Prabhuji's, Mataji's. I'm sorry, maybe I won't take 1 or 2 other questions which are there. Maybe we'll take up next time I'm online because we do need to close. It's getting quite late. So thank you so much for your attention, and please do look after yourself. Vancha kalpaturu bhyascha kripa sindhu bhyeva patitana
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you for wonderful class as always.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Umila Mataji, Hare Krishna, Rupa
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna Mukesh.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Lila Purushottam Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Bhavini Mataji, Hare Krishna, Joli Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Haribo.
Haribo. Haribo.
Haribol.
Hare Krishna Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Is it Sandeep Prabhu? No, KKRH.
Hitesh Prabhu.
Hitesh, okay.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Hare
Thank
Krishna.
you. Hare Krishna. Okay, well, and now thank you so much, Hare Krishna.